This is Face the State for Sunday, June 15th. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Hey, did your father ever tell you, get a job at some point in your life? Well, now lawmakers have a new plan for the minimum wage of that job and any job, what it really should be. But it has some familiar obstacles we're getting into. Should those sentenced to life in prison get a chance at parole? That's an idea that's out there we need to address. And we are also talking immigration enforcement and why there's one shiny new way to become a citizen much faster. Stick around. Face the States now.
CBS 21 News presents Face the State with Joel D. Smith, a look at the issues and politics that shape Pennsylvania.
All right, folks, once again, happy Father's Day to those of you out there celebrating today. Spend a little bit of time with us. This week, the State House passed the bill that would increase the minimum wage. But it's not as simple as one number all across the board. Let's talk about it. We have the chair of the House Labor and Industry Committee. He worked on shaping this bill. Philadelphia Democrat Jason Dawkins. First of all, any shout outs for Father's Day we want to get out of the way here?
Well, I am a father, so I always like to make sure that, I acknowledge the fact that I have some beautiful children. And I had a grandfather that's no longer with us. And it was definitely one of the best things that ever came into my life to build me into the man I am today.
Perfect. Appreciate that always, and hate all the fathers out there. Let's talk about this system, a tiered system this time. We've heard about trying to get to 15 in the past for the minimum wage. It's been stuck in the sevens forever. Why break it up now? Is this a new strategy to try to get it across?
Absolutely. So when we looked at this minimum wage proposal in the past, we look at a starting point that everyone can start at and kind of gradually go up to 15. And we realized quickly as we started talking to stakeholders that different communities have different realities. Every community doesn't have the same economic prowess as others. We wanted to make sure we respected the voices that we heard, and we wanted to try something new. We wanted to at least give our counterparts on the other side something that they can digest, so we can have a lively debate to figure out if this is a new strategy that we can work on to potentially get it over the finish line. I'm not assuming that Cambria County and Philadelphia County has the same economic realities. I want to make sure I'm being respectful of all counties and see where they can start off to make sure I'm not pitting those communities in some type of distress as we try to move the minimum wage.
Okay. So I appreciate it's a new strategy. We've covered this story a lot. As you know, you've probably dealt with this a lot as well. So you're trying some new ways to get there. So personal story, my son's a teenager and I said, hey, you're going to get a job this summer. Something might pay you, maybe $10 an hour. It might be pretty good. He goes, Dad, no one makes less than 12 or 14 or 15. You got to be kidding me. If that's really the market reality, even for teenagers, why do we need this if people are already making much more above $750, $725?
It's like anything else we do in a state government, right? So once we realize that certain things are happening, we try to codify those things into law. We always wanted to have a baseline that we can use as the default line for anyone who may be coming into the actual workforce, new or returning or what have you. We look at all the surrounding states around Pennsylvania. They have all moved their minimum wage. We just want to make sure that we're in line, that we move our minimum wage to be reflective of our commitment to our workers, especially our most low-wage workers that we have in Pennsylvania.
Give me your level of confidence here, because this was on party lines exactly again. Just one vote, 102, 101. What is the likelihood that something's going to change this time around? And I'll mind you, we're going to have someone from the other side coming on in just a second here.
Oh, absolutely. So what I would tell you is that I wouldn't allow the actual vote on the floor to dictate the real sentiments of the bill.
Okay. There's
real conversations being had on the other side of that building with Senate Republicans who absolutely welcome the idea of the debate. I can assure you that there was folks on the Democratic side in the House, Republican side on the House, who also was in favor of this measure. But what they made very clear is that they want to see some type of deal being cut for a larger budget request in order to get this through the finish line. I would say that there's real support for this particular initiative. We just got to make sure we kind of get it out. This is the first step, which I said in committee. This is a long road to get to the finish line here. We have to get through the senators and allow them to actually have a debate. And by the time it gets back into the House, I'm sure we're going to have a different outcome.
Okay, so you're saying it's part of a bigger plan, and maybe that's you got to start somewhere. Okay, I hear you. Where are we going on this other bill, the one to expand parole eligibility for some people convicted of life sentences? Now, you know, the first thing people are going to say, this was adjudicated. We had a jury, there was a judge. People put time into this, they got what they deserve. Why should that be changed at least a little bit when it comes to parole in your mind?
So when I first got elected to the state house, one of the first bills I picked up was this bill here around providing second chances. I believe this country was founded on redemption. I believe that everyone should have a fair say in court. What I will tell you, as time has passed, things in the judicial system has changed. We have had now the DNA advancements we have in technologies where we were able to clear folks who have been wrongly convicted. What I would say the same applies here. When we look at folks who are serving life without parole in our current prison system, a lot of those folks are serving as a second degree offense, which means they may have been a conspiracy or they wrong place, wrong time. You know, hanging out with a friend, a peer. You know, the peer ends up robbing the convenience store,
Right.
end up killing the clerk, and now here you have it. You're now convicted of a second-degree murder offense when you actually didn't have anything to do with the actual planning of that crime or execution of that crime, but because of who you affiliate yourself with allows you to be in a space.
So
So
is it limited then? Is that the point? Is it limited to those kind of situations, or are you saying everybody, even these murderers, would be eligible for parole?
No. So what my bill would essentially do is allow the actual board to make that determination. We just want individuals to have the opportunity to get a hearing. That hearing still will go through the same guidelines that all other hearings go through. We're just saying that these folks who have not been able to have a hearing now have a hearing. Now, there's going to be some folks that's in that hearing that should probably never come home. That's going to be determined based on the folks who are on that board.
I mean, there's already a parole board that deals with some of these decisions, but some people are ineligible even to get that far, is what you were saying.
Exactly. We're just trying to provide eligibility to those folks who have never had it.
Is this going to be a new department that would have to oversee this, to get people into it? How would that work?
No. Essentially, what we'll be doing is amending the current law to allow folks who are serving life prison sentences to have the ability to have one of those parole hearings.
Okay. Interesting stuff. It's on our radar now. We appreciate that. Representative Dawkins, thanks for being here and spending some time on your Father's Day. Have a good one.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yes. All right, folks, our conversation about the minimum wage, what's going to happen. Let's hear from somebody on the other side of the aisle, okay? Yeah, somebody voting against the measure. While he says it's just not necessary, we're going to try to figure this one out today. Maybe. Stick around. All right, we are back. My next guest has been a critic of the plan we just talked about, Republican representative from Blair and Huntington counties, Scott Barger. We will give you the chance for a Father's Day shout out as we start things up here on a Sunday.
Thanks, Joel. You know, I think I better wish Chairman Dawkins a happy Father's Day. I'm honored to serve on Labor and Industry with him. I know he's a dad. He does a good job chairing that committee. And so I'm going to say happy Father's Day, Chairman Dawkins.
There you go. Okay, so at least we're starting on the right foot. I like that. Now let's get into the details of this. What do you think about the bill the way it is?
So, you know, the one part, Joel, it's the same debate that I'm sure you've been covering for years. And that is the one side, our side says, hey, look, there's no need for this. The market is going to drive those wages up. We prefer that the government be hands off and let the market decide what labor is worth. The other side says, hey, the market's taking advantage of some people. We need to give them a baseline pay to make sure that they're being compensated fairly. That debate's been going on. I think we've got evidence, facts, numbers on our side. But the other part of this bill that Republican colleagues object to is how complicated it is to enforce across counties. It would basically establish a different minimum wage based on county class, which would be very cumbersome to figure figure out for a business owner, for example, maybe a landscaper that has laborers working across 2, 3, 4, 5 counties. How much do you pay them per hour? Well, it depends on where they were and at what time. That sounds like bureaucratic red tape for me, so which makes a bad idea, a minimum wage, even worse by adding a bunch of bureaucracy on top of it.
Okay, well, they could just say it's wherever the business is based. I mean, that's a simple one, right?
Sure, you could say wherever the business is based, but then what happens if what happens to businesses when they're given extra motivation to move out of one county into another? I actually don't mind that idea because Blair County, where my home base is, would be a little bit cheaper than for people to operate their home business. We might attract some businesses from Philadelphia to set up shop here, and that would be all right. But it still becomes cumbersome, and it also has this added concern of government interference in the cost of things in the market, which always has unintended consequences, Joel, and that's what Republican colleagues and myself are concerned about, that we will try to fix one problem but solve or start 2 more.
Well, you diagnosed the traditional arguments really well at the beginning. You know, if no one's paying that anyway, why do we need a law?
Sure.
And that's legit. I hear you. But here's the thing. Why not take it as a political win then as Republicans, since it doesn't matter anyway and people are already paying more? Pick a number and then it's no longer a talking point from the Democrats.
Because I think it's important to let people who are just entering that less than 1%, Joel, 0.8% of Pennsylvania workers are being paid minimum wage. Those are my kids. I have teenagers, right? And I love them. I think they're the best, but guess what? They're not worth $14 an hour. They're just not, because they're learning. They need the opportunity to go in to a place, push a broom in a storehouse someplace, make minimum wage or a little bit more, and learn how to be valuable employees. If we make people pay more for something than what it's worth to them, they're going to stop buying it, which means that these folks, like my teenagers and other people like them, are going to be missing opportunities to get that first step into the job force.
All right, we'll see where it goes from here. And like he said, you know, the other representative, if this is part of a bigger negotiation, we all seen this in the past. There's bartering, there's things, that's how the sausage, you know, gets made. Maybe it'll come back your way again, and we'll see where it stands there. Let's move on to this one that you're talking about. Public school districts to permit private school students who live in the district to be a part of the extracurricular activities there that the private school doesn't offer. Seems reasonable. Similar legislation in there for the charter schools, but public schools are paying for a student's chartered tuition in that scenario. So here, who would actually be covering these costs?
So we can't forget, Joel, that when a parent decides to send their child to a private school, that public school and their school district are still receiving funding for that student, right? It's just that the parents are paying an additional tuition on top of that to send their kids elsewhere. Okay. The way I look at it is, if there is educational value to any of these extracurricular programs, whether it be athletics or arts or music, whatever it might be, it should be available for all students who live within that school district. The more choices that parents have, I think the better the education the child will receive.
In your research on this, have you found out that it's one particular extracurricular activity? Is it sports? Is it a music opportunity? What are you seeing?
That's a great question, because it's really difficult to diagnose which extracurriculars are worth it, Joel, because in my opinion, if you want to decide if something's worth it, you have to know how much it costs and what are the benefits. And some of the benefits of these extracurriculars are kind of in the realm of, it feels good, we like it. Who doesn't like a football game, you know, on a Friday night and to cheer the home team on? That feels good. It's good for community, but how do you measure it? So it's hard to say which curriculum or which extracurricular activities are going to be most beneficial to students. I think let the parents decide. If you think it's good for your kid to join a traveling athletic team or a, you know, acting troupe or whatever it might be, if you think that's going to be good for your kid, then do it. And I think that this bill would give parents more options. I don't think it's going to be excessively burdensome for our public school systems, and I think it will be ultimately beneficial to the most number of students. After all, who knows better how to educate their kid than the parents?
Would this be optional, or only they have to not have that particular extracurricular activity to
absolutely.
then?
The bill as it's written, and I hope that it will proceed. That part's not up to me. We'll let the majority party decide whether it's worth considering. But if it would be extracurricular activities that aren't available in the private school. So if you don't have that team, but your public school does, it gives you option for your child to participate in that extracurricular.
Gotcha. All right. We have less than a minute to go. Plenty of time to talk about the budget because you're going to tell me exactly what's left and when we're going to finish. No, you've been through this process. So, I mean, compared to other years, let's at least do that. Where are we at?
Okay, so first of all, I haven't been through the process. I am a brand new freshman. So all I have to go on, Joel, is the horror stories that other legislators are telling me. I wish I could tell you, guaranteed we get this thing wrapped up with a bow put on it by the end of this week, but something tells me we're not going to.
Okay, I'll accept that you've seen the process before, but being in the thick of it sometimes can be a different deal.
It is a little bit different, a little bit different.
All right, well, thanks for spending some time with us here on a Father's Day, and we'll see you down the road when you're a veteran politician by then.
Hey, thanks, Joe. I appreciate the opportunity. God bless.
Representative Barger, thank you very much. Hey, the political insiders are standing by. They're talking minimum wage as well. And also, what about ICE? What should really happen next? And is there an easy way out if you got the right card? We're talking about that coming up. Here it is, my favorite time of the week. We're with our CBS 21 political insiders. I like spending time with these guys on a Father's Day. It's Democratic strategist Mark Singal, Republican strategist Mike Regan. Pleasantries are over. Let's get into this. Why have you voted against the minimum wage increase when you were in the Senate?
I'm having a hard time remembering getting
Never got that far to you?
I don't think it ever got that far.
Well, how would you have voted on it then? I mean, if it came in.
Well, it depends what it was. I mean, I always thought $20 was too much. You know, I thought between 10 and 15 was a reasonable thing. I'm not sure what's holding it up now. I think that's probably a reasonable number. 12, 15 bucks is a pretty good number. But I think probably Republicans want to see some reduction in taxes and some regulations so we can get family-sustaining wages. It always amazed me why we talk so much about the minimum wage and we don't talk about family-sustaining wages, where people can take a vacation and people can have investments and and do all the things and have a real life as opposed to that. So all we need to do is lower corporate taxes and lessen regulations and get some of those big companies in here.
Let's go behind the scenes for a second here. We need to wear ties today. You give him a blue tie, he turns into a Democrat. Did you just hear what he just said?
I know, I heard him.
Living wage.
Living wages for families. I'm with you, man, and that's right. Unfortunately, that costs a lot of money, and I'm anti-raising taxes.
Wow, you guys want to switch sides on this? What is going on today?
Well, on the minimum wage, though, it's always a political football at budget time, because what happens is that everybody's kind of for raising the minimum wage. They've been there for years. But there's always some quid pro quo that one side wants. So they'll get there this year, I think, and you're going to see the minimum wage increased.
There's a number of things to talk about when it comes to immigration enforcement. It kind of came to a head in York City this week, where a gentleman who's lived there for a long time was suddenly detained, and some of his peers, his neighbors, his coworkers saying, what's going on here? Well, we eventually found out this from the York City mayor. He said the man detained had been in the country for 20 years under an order of supervision. So he said this, quote, "This means he had attempted to petition to remain in the United States, and their petition was denied, and they were ordered to leave the country as soon as they were able." He says the United States government, quote, "allowed people for decades to falsely believe that they were safe and they could flourish and put down roots here. Now, by enforcing these existing policies, families and businesses are being thrown into chaos." This has been going on for a long time. It sounds like this guy got kind of caught up in it and got used to the status quo.
Well, that's exactly the problem. The immigration laws in the United States have loopholes that you can drive a truck through. And if you really want to solve the problem, get serious, sit down in a bipartisan manner, fix the immigration laws so that we don't have this situation cropping up all the time.
Yeah, order of supervision for this time.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what the governor said. There should be some hard, fast rules to follow. But I think, again, I hate to blame it on the Biden administration, but I think I have to. 8 million illegal immigrants crossed over. The president's been tasked with getting them out. And again, this is like a case which would require a scalpel. And you just can't do that when there's that many people who came in the country.
Well, I always cringe when I hear numbers like that because they just simply are exaggerated. The fact of the matter is that there were 8 million encounters during the Biden years, but those don't mean that these are people that crossed over. Most of those were turned away. Some of them were adjudicated properly, and some of them slipped through the cracks.
Can you imagine millions?
It's more like 300,000 a year, so a couple million. I'm thinking maybe 2.
Well, 8 million is the size of Virginia, so that gives you an idea of the scope of the problem.
Yeah, well, and it's down to a trickle now. I think we all agree on that as well. So that part of it's been solved. But what do you still do to get people in the system the right way? And someone who's been a good neighbor for all that time, should there be a better path we're not there at this point.
I think there should be, though. I agree with that.
Well, here's one path for you. There is a gold card we're talking about. We're going to put a price on the card, $5 million, and that's going to give you green card privileges, plus it's going to be a route to citizenship. Wealthy people will be coming to our country by buying this card. Yes, that is the quote from Mr. Donald Trump, the president. What do we think of the gold card visa?
Well, I like it in the sense that if you have somebody who's at the University of Pennsylvania, let's say at Wharton School of Business, and they are a top-notch student, and they could come to America and work for a company, that a company like Deloitte or whoever could pay that $5 million for them to get that person into the country. But it would have to come with a really proper and intense vetting.
Scrutiny, yeah,
definitely before it happened, but I don't think it's a bad idea.
Okay.
No, I think it's a terrible idea. I mean, come on, it doesn't pass the smell test. You shouldn't have to pay to play to do something like get American citizenship. It just speaks to how corrupt the administration is when it comes to these things.
We're going to go to this. You know, the National Guard was federalized by President Trump. Then the court said you couldn't do that. Went back to the power of California, and then it was another injunction and came back the other way. So they're still kind of debating this. This goes on to Philadelphia as well, where they want to distribute some of these extra National Guard under the federal guise. What do you think of this, since you've been kind of in that realm before?
Can I talk about my experiences in the Senate? I was the Law and Justice Chair, and we looked one time really closely at Philadelphia. And at that time, there were 1,800 police officers short. And now I hear the numbers over 2,000 police officers short. So if there's an insurrection or massive protests in Philadelphia, that's going to be a real problem for that police department. Now, I would say to Governor Shapiro, if you see that happening, you need to call out the National Guard. Keep the president himself from having to do it. And in California, I think that was the case. Gavin Newsom said, I'm not doing it. The president said, okay, well, if you're not going to do it, I'll do it. And things happen that way. But I think that Governor Shapiro needs to be careful. He needs to come down on the side of law enforcement. He needs to come down on the side of safety and security of Philadelphians and not do something dumb here.
Sure, and Mike is absolutely right. It is the governor who's the commander-in-chief of the National Guard in each of the states. So it's unconstitutional and it's illegal for the president simply to take that power onto himself.
Not true.
Without some kind of communication with the governor.
The Insurrection Act allows for it to happen.
If there's an insurrection, this is not anywhere near an insurrection. This
Not
is
yet.
a protesting of policies. So he was wrong to take it over. But I'll give you this. The governor needs to step up when it looks like there is a possibility of violence and so on. And they were a little bit late.
Let me just
doing
wrap it
that
up quick. Go ahead.
In Los Angeles, federal buildings, federal troops are under attack, which falls under the subcategories in the Insurrection Act, which I think gave the president the right to do.
In that specific instance?
Yes.
All right, something that we can talk about in the future and see where it goes, but I think we all agree we want safe protests and we don't want any violence coming from them. Well, also something we can agree on, the Founding Fathers were awesome, so on Father's Day, let's find out who these guys' favorite Founding Fathers were. Stick around for that. On this Father's Day, let's talk about the Founding Fathers. Do you have a favorite Founding Father?
I tend to revere all of them, but one that's always overlooked, in my view, is John Dickinson.
Okay.
As in Dickinson College, from Pennsylvania. He stood up against slavery and said from the beginning, we cannot have any kind of countenance with this strange, sin that we are.
We have so many Founding Fathers in the history of Pennsylvania. It's all just ingrained right around us.
George Washington was the OG. I mean, he was such a bad you-know-what. Also love Ben Franklin, but I have to give a shout-out also to James Madison, because my son plays safety for James Madison Dukes.
Madison's a good choice, too. He was like the scrivener that recorded everything.
Very good. Well, anyway, happy Father's Day to you guys, everybody out there. And it's one of those days that we can all come together and forget the politics for a little bit, maybe play a little bit of golf and just enjoy each other, right? Happy Father's Day, folks. We'll see you next week.
Happy Father's Day.